We're going to be doing our lightning talks, as many of you heard. About 6 officers are giving talks, and we'll introduce ourselves as we come up. Max, I'm the president of the club, 4th year computer science major. I think that's not much more further ado, so let's just get right into it. So what I want to talk to you today is about what this club is, and then really what it is to me, because it's a lot of things, and it's a lot of things to a lot of different people. And that's awesome. I'm so happy that I can be part of a club that does that. And does what is a very valid question, so let's get right into it. First and foremost, White Hat is one of the best ways to become more and more knowledgeable about computer security. That's everything from how to attack systems to in order to learn to better defend them, how to encrypt messages. We can keep secrets from our friends and our enemies. How to do things like fix networks when they explode or people are trying to make them explode. All sorts of fun stuff. There are people in this club who are experts in software, hardware, everything from web networks, as I said, to physical security. We're going to have a cool talk on lockpicking later. To really everything in between. There's a lot of core principles to security that are unchanging as the technology changes. Things like threat modeling, figuring out what an attacker can do in a situation. And these are all things that we just get super excited about at White Hat, and that's a lot of fun to be a part of. Learning security can be really hard because it's a very new field. Computer security education is an extremely rapidly developing field. If you've met Dr. Peterson, a lot of his work is in computer security education and how can we do it better, which there's a lot of really cool ideas that he has and that community has. So if you're interested in that, definitely talk to him. But as a result of this, it's sort of, there isn't one great way to learn computer security. And so, we try to cover everything that the classes simply can't due to time or simply can't due to either infrastructure requirements or whatever it might be. We try to sort of run alongside the classes offered here and give you a chance to, and I'm going to say it, learn by doing. And so the other nice thing about being sort of co-curricular in that way is that we can have a very healthy sprinkling of only the dankest memes. And so it is with joy that I can present the first meme of the school year. And there will be many more to follow. If you don't get the reference, that's totally fine. I'm sure we'll do a movie night eventually. If you do, I see you out there. So White Hat is a lot of things, as I said, and one of my favorite things about White Hat is just the people I've met here. So I joined this club my freshman year. I knew I knew a good amount of security. Came in with some background, which was, I was very fortunate to have a chance to do that. And so it was just I think I know security. I know one tiny percent of one tiny sliver of the massive umbrella that is security. And there's a lot of people who know a lot of really cool stuff. And so the club really, for me, became a place where I could go to hang out with people who knew stuff that I wanted to know. And a lot of those people were 3rd and 4th years. A lot of those people have since graduated, who are working at places like, let's see, everything from Apple to Google to Tesla to all sorts of awesome companies. And so the people have been really, 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 really impactful for me. I've met some of my best friends that I've had in college here, and I've had some of the most fun weekends hacking away at a CTF with Nick, and just all sorts of good stuff. I don't know if any of you all are on our Facebook group. You may have seen that ancient photo resurface, but yeah, that was neat. And then the other chance that the other type of people I've had a chance to meet are the professors. The 2 professors who are very involved in this club are Dr. Bruce DeBrule and Dr. Zach Peterson, who are pictured both with their fantastic beards. Zach has since shaved, but we don't talk about that. They're wonderful, super knowledgeable in what they do and in security in general. I highly recommend all of the classes they teach. Definitely just hang out with them and be like, hey, how do I hack thing? because they'll just go off on a tangent. It's great to get people like that talking, and that's like one of the best ways that I've found to learn is just come up to people and just be open about the fact that you just want to learn, and like people will respond. And that's something I've found with both the professors and the students, that security is just such a huge field that you kind of pick a dozen or 1,000 or whatever little sort of niche topics and dive deep into them. And then you talk to someone else and it's like, oh, you've been doing like research, or like you've been like reading online about this one thing. And it's like, that's awesome. I've never even heard of that, but it's super related to some other thing that I've heard of. And it's just a lot of fun. It's a really great community, and we can make it a great community by like having that sort of shared learning. Yeah. So moving right along. White Hat is also a great chance to meet companies that love us. Companies really, especially, it's pick your news du jour. I guess now it's Equifax. Every time something like that happens, companies are like, hey, we need to hire security engineers. And then they look around, it's like, there are no security engineers. And so, they love coming to us and be like, how can we, help your club do awesome stuff? And sometimes that means Microsoft giving us 3D printers. What are we going to do with these 3D printers? I don't know. I would love to hear your ideas. And sometimes that means like, giving us servers, and we're like, all right, let's do something with it. It's a lot of fun, and it's a constantly evolving relationship with like people who want us to do cool stuff. And I'm also just really happy with all of this, so I'm just going to let that run. Cool. So that's like probably 60%-ish of the companies we've had events with in the last couple of years. It's so much fun when like people reach out to you and be like, hey, how can we get involved in your club? How can we, can we send engineers? Can we do like events? Can we do hackathons? Can we do talks? It's just really exciting and something that's really fun to be a part of. Yeah, cool. So White Hat is also something that has been very beneficial for me, has been practicing public speaking, which early on I had non-existent skills in this arena, and over time, as I gave more and more talks, I worked my way all the way up to like, okay, kind of meh, but it's the improvement that it really counts. It's been so much fun. I love diving into some topic and like getting to share that with people, and I love hearing when people do that and feel really good about like what they've learned. And sometimes that's like some specific branch of technical security, and sometimes that's like some random thing related to physical security, or like whatever it may be. There's a lot of variation in our talks, as you can see on our YouTube channel. White Hat also is something that is a really interesting experience, which is when you first sort of like feel like you hack something, and it will almost certainly not look like this. Actually, it definitely won't look like this because this was the DEF CON qualifier CTF challenge. But it's a really cool feeling when it's like, wow, I figured out this system and I did the right thing, and it worked. Like I now have access to whatever it might be, and we want to make that happen for people who want that experience in a way that is legal and fun and exciting, and make it be a learning experience. Dive into CTFs. They can be very complicated, and there's a huge learning curve. Just keep hammering away at it, and remember that not only are you might be a total beginner in security, you might have heard of tons of things in security. There will always be challenging new problems, but remember that this is your opportunity to be confused and then to come out of that less confused. That's really the goal, less confusion. White Hat is also a club. If there's one really important thing I want you to take away from this, which is find a club. Maybe it's White Hat, maybe whatever the club is. Maybe you start it yourself. But find a club and get really invested in it, because that's where you're going to meet people who are doing more than like taking classes and graduating and leaving. Again, this is like your opportunity to do this And it is so much fun, and there's so many potential rewarding things in clubs and sort of co-curricular stuff that I can't recommend it higher. White Hat is, in my opinion, like just my favorite thing about coming here. Maybe I was working over the summer in the Bay Area, and it was like, oh God, I just can't wait to get back. Can't wait to get back to Cal Poly. I can't wait to get back to these awesome people. And it's been just such a great learning experience for me. And I've just met so many people who are just awesome. Like, they're my best friends. They've taught me so much, just everything from security to working with people to, all sorts of things. And so really get invested in a club and like make it, find something that's important to you and really be a part of it. So that's, to me, what White Hat is. So I want to thank you all for coming. Thank you all for, all of you who have been on this ridiculous journey with me, and to those who have maybe 3, maybe 4, maybe 5 years ahead of you. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. Cool. I'll stop taking up everyone else's time. Thanks. I think Nick is.
Yes. Awesome. Oh, this thing's awesome. So that was like really heartfelt and good, so I can't do that. So I'm just going to use memes to fill that void. So, all right. Hi, everyone. My name is Nick. I'm a fourth year. Oh, God. I am a fourth year computer scientist. I'm also the CTF master for White Hat, so I'm in charge of coordinating a lot of our CTFs and various related events. And I want to talk to y'all about So You Want to Do Security. So, fortunately for all of you here, you have all, first off, welcome to Cal Poly, welcome to White Hat. I always love the first meeting of the quarter. There's so many cool people, some new people come out, and I get to talk with everyone. So if you want to do security, you've actually made the first 2 best and most difficult steps already, which is 1, you survived WoW. You made it through a week of them, WoW is insane. It's incredible. I'm impressed as hell that y'all make it through it. So 1, you've survived WoW and you've chosen Cal Poly, and 2, you've come and found us at White Hat. We take, as Max said, we take a lot of pride in trying to distribute security information, try to get you more aware about all that stuff, and basically try to be a supplement to the security curriculum here. So I'm remembering back to my freshman year when I first joined White Hat. A lot of the thing, I ran into sort of the same conversation with a lot of the upperclassmen, which goes something like this. Yeah, I really want to do security. It sounds awesome. What kind of security? Shit. Wasn't ready for this. Also, side note, if you wonder why that picture all of a sudden from our freshman year started bumping up, it may have been because I was looking for this. Yeah, freshman Nick. So what I wanted to do today is basically talk about a small subset of the fields of security to sort of get you aware of what are the different types of things you can do in security, because it's actually a very diverse field. There's a lot of different sides when you just say, I like security. And actually, the first one I want to talk about is cryptography. So cryptography is the science of encoding and encrypting messages. So the idea of, I would like to take some piece of computer information and make it so that only certain people can see it. Only people who have maybe a certain key or know a certain passphrase, or maybe they can do the fusion dance from Dragon Ball Z, and that's the way to get in. A lot of it, not that last one, but a lot of it relies on modern mathematics. So it actually ends up being a very theoretical field, but also has a lot of these very practical applications. We need to, once we develop these new crypto systems, they end up being like, okay, we've built it, how do we actually get it out there? So if you really like math, this is a great field for you. If you're less of a fan of math, you should A, become more of a fan of math. And I'll talk about that probably in the future. But B, there are plenty of places where cryptography can actually be incredibly applicable. And if you decide to get into the field of cryptography, a lot of what you'll hear is don't roll your own crypto. As I said, modern math, while it's really cool, is really hard. And there's a lot of ways to do it really wrong. You can ask any Snap, Gram, Tele, Facebook Messenger. about how to do it wrong. And so there's this idea of don't roll your own crypto. And that's sort of just this little mantra that you're going to hear. That does not mean don't work with it. That just means understand if you're going to actually put it into production, if you're actually going to use it, make sure you know what you're doing. And that's something that just comes with time. And yes, cryptocurrency does technically fall under crypto. Does technically fall under crypto. It's an interesting sort of way to exchange money without having to do all the Bitcoin and Ethereum thing. There'll be more talks about that. Actually, I think in future quarters we have one of those lined up, maybe. In talking about that, I wanted to talk a little bit about what happens when security goes horribly wrong. So all of modern security, or almost all of it, is based on one problem. And that is, I have a huge thousand-digit number, and it's composed of 2 primes. Primes are numbers that when you divide them, they can only get by 1. So we multiplied together these 2 primes, and it's really, really hard to figure out, based on this really, really long number, what are the 2 primes that made it. And so the idea is we all pick our big primes, and we multiply them together, and it's all awesome. Well, those primes are really hard to find. In fact, they actually cost money to find these. If you find a prime, you can sell it to the NSA. So the solution to that is we're just like, well, what's this library using? That seems like a good set of primes. And what ultimately happened over time is 92% of the internet now uses these 2. So if you can crack, instead of having to crack every single prime, if some agency that may have more than 4 and less than 2 letters, or more than 2 and less than 4 letters comes and cracks some primes, they get 92% of the internet. So that's the sort of thing that we mean by be careful with crypto, but that doesn't mean that you can't get into it. It's still an awesome field. The next one I want to talk about is privacy. So privacy is so how do you apply a lot of the security primitives we've built up, a lot of these different measures, to actually ensure people can remain private, that people can remain in control of their data and what's called their metadata, which is data about data, which is actually really just data, but sometimes people like to call it metadata so they can steal it. Don't be fooled, it's just more data. So a lot of privacy is built around that. It's very much an intersection of technical and policy sides. So there's, in addition to using these technical primitives and introducing them, you have to say, all right, what are ethical ways to use this? How much of this do we need? The answer is a lot. There's also the other big thing in privacy is sort of trying to avoid this mass surveillance. So in the time that we live in, there's a lot of, you hear on the news all the time about these mass surveillance campaigns, the NSA dragnetting lots of public data, and trying to make correlations about us. So the story I want to tell about privacy actually kind of pertains to that, and I want to do that with a little experiment. So I want everyone to raise your hands. Okay, drop your hand keep your hand up if you use Firefox. Keep your hand up if you use Mac. Cool, all right, there's 5 people in the room. So using those 3 pieces of data, I'm able to go from a room of, I don't know how many, a large room, to 5 individual people. Your browser gives away so much more data than that this program, Panopticlick, which is something that the Electronic Frontier Foundation comes up with, can uniquely fingerprint almost every browser it runs into. And they can be like, and if they can do it, you can probably guarantee that other companies and federal agencies are probably doing it. So even though you're just using the internet normally, people can fingerprint you, figure out, oh, shoot, if this exact signature comes back, this is person X, and customize or change things based on that. So a little fear. And these pictures are completely unrelated. All right, the last one I want to talk about is malware analysis. Malware analysis is really cool. So this is sort of I want to go into software and pick it apart. I want to see how does this piece of malicious code actually work? Because a lot of the time, when you're looking through a piece of virus or a Trojan horse, something you've been sent, you don't have this nice source code layout. You got to go look at the actual machine instructions and see, based on that, see what are the tricks that this thing's using, what are the cool sort of side doors in the operating system. It's a lot of, it's very much for the person who wants to know how it all works under the hood. And I'm one of those people, so I very much enjoy that. It also leads to some pretty, and yeah, I covered all that. Cool. The story I want to tell with that is, how many of y'all heard about Wannacry? For those of y'all who didn't, Wannacry was a huge piece of malware that ended up infecting a ton of mostly Windows XP, I think, boxes with a specific vulnerability, and was able to actually cripple the National Health Services in Britain. It was devastating this until it just one day stopped. And everyone was like, what happened here? What it turned out is this person, Malware Tech, who's a malware analyst, looked through the code and found some random URL and found that if they registered that URL to a real web page, then the virus just turned off. It was some kill switch that the virus writer had put in. And so by doing this, he was able to basically end this iteration. Obviously, they then changed the virus to not have a dumb kill switch. But it was able to slow down this virus incredibly because now this strain couldn't spread. So yeah, that was sort of a very funny, like, okay, maybe these people aren't like putting as much. These people should have like read a style guide, maybe done 101. I don't know. So, what do you do if you want to get involved in these? For cryptography, we actually have a cryptography course here, CSE 323. It's based off of a Stanford cryptographer's course named Dan Bonnet. So you can either take 323 or you can also look for his course online. It's fully available. There's also something called Monosato's Crypto Pals. This is an kind of older challenge, but it illustrates a lot of the basics of security, and it's a set of war games, like war games are CTF practice. So basically a set of cryptography related questions that you can build through and learn more and more about cryptography as you're actually implementing things. So if you're one of the people who actually likes working on stuff and building things out, that's your way of learning. That's a great one. As for privacy, I got this recommendation from Marina. Read a privacy policy. You know that thing that you click through that no one reads? Some people read them, and those people actually know how much of our data we're giving away to our corporate overlords. So I really, go read one. They're quite interesting, and they have to be laid out relatively nicely by law. It's just no one reads them. So go check one of those out. We also have a privacy course coming up soon. It's available now, maybe. CSE 323, it'll be a privacy course that we go through, and it'll be available by the time most of y'all are getting past the 357 hurdle. And lastly, for malware analysis, CrackMes are basically these little programs that people will put up on various different websites that you can download them and just pick them apart, look at how they work. They're usually they're not designed to be incredibly difficult. They're designed to do one of the little tricks. So you can say, okay, this is how this trick works. This is how this trick works. So you can pull that. Also, practical malware analysis is the Bible of malware analysis. It's where a lot of people get started. And if you have questions about it, you can ask me. Now, for all of these work. Even if you didn't see something that particularly interests you, if you find a piece of security, come talk to us. We want to talk to you. As Max said, there's people with all different specializations across this club. We want to talk to you about security and privacy and malware analysis and ethical hacking and all that good stuff. In addition, there's a ton of blogs out there. So Bruce Schneier does a really good blog. Basically, a bunch of these, I'm getting the... and lastly, ask us questions and watch the recorded talks. So there's a bunch of recorded talks on the whitehat.club of all these different things that we've talked about in the past. If you find a topic that interests you, go see if there's a talk on that. There probably is. We've done a ton of these. And this is Billy May saying there's more security topics. There's a ton of them. There really are. If you can think of it, there's probably a security topic related to it. So go out and find it, and happy hacking. Thank you very much.
Hi all. So that was a nice useful, interesting, useful talk. This one will be hopefully interesting, but not quite as useful. So yeah, it should be fun. I'm Marina. I am the corporate liaison for White Hat this year, which means I talk to some companies, get them to come, bring food, and talk about cool, interesting things that they're working on. So yeah, and I'm going to be talking about the definition of a hacker and kind of how you might have heard this term, what it means to me, all the different ways it's used. So yeah, this is common uses kind of found from a Google search of the word hacker. So there's the terms that you see in the media, like in movies and in shows, which is often kind of the idea of like what we would call a black hat hacker. I'll get to that later. But it's kind of like the person who's always on the computer, usually doing criminal activities, kind of breaking into systems, that kind of thing. There's also the headlines you see in the news, like this one there, which is also pretty negative usually. I feel like they're always about systems being broken into, people's stuff being stolen, all that kind of stuff. Then this is kind of this other side of the word hack that you hear, like in terms of like life hacks and hackathons, where you're like building things or making your life better in various little ways. So how do you kind of put these two terms together? So here's a list of definitions of the word hack that I found. My favorite is the first one. It means to alter. So I feel like it kind of describes all of those different things, because they're all different ways that people are altering systems, altering their lives, altering something, either to make it better or to make it worse, depending on how they're doing it. These middle two are very specific to computers and kind of that illegal aspect. And then that third one is another one of my favorite definitions, which is kind of a creatively improvised solution. That's how I put it, which I really liked, because it's about solving a problem in a creative way and finding a new solution, usually like a quick solution so that you can move on to other things. So where did this word come from? The first use that I could find of the word was at MIT. They have kind of this culture of these hacks, which are basically just elaborate pranks, usually have to do with like creativity or doing something weird. So these are some of their more famous ones. They got a fire truck on the roof of this big domed building somehow. The one over on the side, they made like a Tetris game out of a building. Just kind of stuff like that, just kind of these weird, silly projects that brought a lot of people together to build something. So then the first recorded use where it was written down, so the term was pretty common on the MIT campus by around the 1960s, so it was just kind of a commonly used term. And including, it was used by the Tech Model Railroad Club at MIT. And so, they just made these model railroads. They had a bunch of people. And one of the things they did was they made a dictionary of terms that were commonly used in the club. So apparently they have a bunch of like esoteric terms in the model railroad community. So they needed to define them all so that new members could figure them out. And one of the words that they wrote in this dictionary was the word hack, which they defined as an elaborate college prank carried out by MIT students. So kind of referring to that other definition that we saw. And among the people in this model railroad club were a lot of mostly hardware engineers working on the switches and other parts of the electronics, who later went on to become programmers and start working with computers as those started to come out and be more popular. So the next kind of use kind of in this chain came in the jargon file. So this one was made at Stanford. So my kind of understanding is that there's kind of some communication between all the people in the early computing community. And so this term kind of made its way throughout academia, I guess. And so it was written down by Raphael Finkel. He was the first person to publish what was called a jargon file, which is basically just a list of the jargon used by the early computer programmers, and so like a bunch of programming slang and other things and weird ways to annotate things, like leet speak and some of that other stuff. If you've heard, a lot of the origins of that came here. And one of the really interesting things they did was they differentiated between hackers and crackers. So hackers are kind of that previous definition, the ones that built things and kind of had creative solutions to problems. And the crackers are the ones that broke things, the ones that broke into systems and hacked them and did all that illegal stuff, and that definition that we talked about earlier. So both of these definitions were published online in 1975. They actually printed it out and sold it in dictionary form in 1983. I don't know if there's any of those still around, but kind of interesting. So we've kind of combined those two words in our modern usage, I feel like, to make it very confusing what the word hacker actually means, because the word cracker isn't used so much anymore. People just call both things hackers, even though they kind of are opposite. So it's kind of both of those things. So now we're talking about security hacking, which is kind of a subset of the greater computer hacking and that whole area. So security hacking is often defined as that first thing, people involved with the circumvention of computer security, which sounds like it would be all the illegal thing, but there's actually basically two main groups of people who do this. There's the white hat and black hat hackers. So basically, the white hat hackers are the ones who are trying to figure out how a system is broken so that they can then fix it so that nobody else can get into it and nothing bad happens from that problem. So it's kind of like, it's like you're testing the system, basically, and just finding out how it's broken so you can fix it. You're always doing it with the owner's consent, which is the main key to white hat hacking, is always having consent and then telling them when something is broken. And you're often paid by the people whose system it is to make it better, which is always nice. And then there's the black hat hackers, which do it illegally. They often like stealing things and hurting people and doing all kinds of bad things. And that's kind of like the definition, like the cracker definition from before. So yeah, what we do here is that first definition, so the ethical hacking. So we do white hat hacking, we do everything with permission and everything, and report everything that we find. And so I think it's kind of, I guess that's the takeaway from this, is that it's kind of like, it's a confusing term, but this is the way that we mean it when we say that we are hackers and we participate in this community. And we're interested in creative solutions and finding ways around problems while still having ethics and being responsible. So a cool way to get involved in this while still maintaining ethics and doing everything legally is CTFs. It's a great way to learn, a great way to get involved and figure out how to circumvent systems and have a lot of fun. So yeah. So that's my show.
So, hi everyone. I'm here to talk about hardware security because I am Nate Graff. I'm a fifth-year master's student, and I'm the hardware outreach officer. So my goal is really, my prime directive is to get as many EEs, CPEs, and anyone else interested in learning about hardware and hardware security in this club as possible. So just to start with, how many people are EEs or CPEs? Awesome. That's so great. That's like our best turnout ever. Keep coming back. Keep coming back. We'll have a lot of cool stuff for you all. So, what's an EE doing in these here parts is what you might be wondering about. But essentially, what we have here is a computer, and if you put garbage in, you can get garbage out. But I also want to talk about how the computer itself is also garbage. So I want to talk about all the ways that the hardware is garbage too. So it really mostly comes down to the fact that we build hardware out of physics. And physics leaves you a lot of options for how this stuff actually ends up working. And physics is often really unintuitive. And lastly, physics usually makes hardware have all kinds of side effects that we don't intend that end up being really relevant for security purposes. So just to overview, lots of options means that you have a lot of different ways you can try to screw with the hardware. So this is an example of one way to screw with hardware. It's called a USB killer. It's like $35, and if you plug it into a USB port, it'll zap it with like -200 volts and fry the USB port. And you can just walk up to anything you want and kill it. So that's what I kind of mean by a lot of options. Like when you're hacking with software, you end up having some kind of integer involved, but hardware gives you a bunch of, not only the ability to throw tons of integers in there and try to break it, but also like just hit it with a hammer and see if it breaks. So anything you can imagine physically doing to a piece of hardware ends up being a way you might be able to exploit it from a hardware perspective. Physics can also be really unintuitive. So you have all this different hardware-y stuff, and I'm a fifth year, and I still often feel like this dog. So it's really such an interesting field because there's so many different layers, literally lots of layers. I mean, PCBs have layers. But there are so many layers to the security of an object, especially a computer, and hardware is such an important series of turtles all the way down that I really love learning about it and teaching people about it and encouraging people to learn about it. There's also unintended side effects like row hammer, which some of you may have heard about, which is where if you write data to the RAM in the computer a lot in a certain way, the actual electromagnetic interference of doing that will affect other parts of the RAM. And you would never know that just from doing software, but when you get into literally the electrical signals of it, you find that stuff can happen that you never expected, hence unintended side effects. You also get stuff like using the sound of the fan of the computer to extract information. This is an example of a side channel attack, which happens to be my thesis topic, not the sound part, but like side channel attacks are a really fun kind of hardware security topic that you'll absolutely be hearing about more if you stick with the club and listen to me babble on about stuff. An example of side channel attacks, someone was able to extract the private key from a Bitcoin wallet by measuring the amount of power. So this is a trace from that. Again, I'll babble on about it for ages. And so really when I talk about learning about hardware security though and getting people in it, it's so important because the cards are stacked against us. A lot of hardware, and especially hardware that's developed for the sake of security, is closed source and hidden behind NDAs and legal agreements and contracts. And I can't even tell people about some of the documents I read last summer. Because the hardware is an unremovable part of the system, there are all kinds of unaudited backdoors that we can't get rid of in these systems, and it's really important to learn about in order to try to circumvent the circumvention. Also, hardware security is difficult because it costs money to buy physical objects. Like, if you want to download a program, I mean, you might have to pay for it in certain cases, but you can pretty much make copies of it. One thing I learned from interning in electrical engineering is that every time you build something, it costs money. So that's another layer to get past. And the other thing is, hardware is often below all the layers of human abstraction that we build to make things more intuitive to understand. And so a lot of hardware security is just wrapping your head around how any of this stuff works anyway, which if you want to, you chose the right school to learn that. And most importantly is we can't do anything without hardware. Like, software isn't software unless it has a computer to run on. And so it's of tantamount importance that we all familiarize ourselves with hardware security, even if we're not hardware engineers. And so here's my call to action, basically. For hardware security in particular, we have a bunch of talks and workshops planned for this year. Some really cool ones, including reflashing the BIOS, basically, on ThinkPad laptop, all the way through hacking a Bluetooth lock. Lots of fun stuff. Later this quarter, I'll actually be giving a talk on USB-C, partly because I got a new MacBook with USB-C. But so all kinds of cool hardware security stuff. Because security is holistic, whether or not you're a hardware engineer, or even if you are a hardware engineer, make sure you learn a bit of both, because security depends on knowing everything about a system. And though we can't all know everything, if we all contribute parts of it and know about what each other is doing with the system, we might have a shot. And then I am working with a couple professors here, including Professor Bruce DeBrule and Andrew Danowitz, to help create a hardware security class. That might be by some of you guys' fourth year that it comes out, but hopefully it's still coming out. And lastly, if any of you are interested in hardware security research, I know the professors to put you in contact with, and I can also just talk to you about my own stuff too. So, and I promise I'm friendly, so feel free to come talk to me. That's all I got. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Hi, I'm Kylan. I'm a second-year computer science math double major, and I'm also the White Hat publicity officer. So if you guys haven't signed up for the Facebook group, you should definitely do that. And if you haven't signed up for the email list, you should definitely do that. And if you don't know how to do either of those things, you should come talk to me. So today I'm going to be teaching you guys all about lockpicking, which is, I know, like a kind of popular topic, especially right after open house and right after some of the events where we do a little bit more lockpicking demonstration. So first I have to give a little disclaimer. Please use your skills for good, not evil. That means do not pick locks that you do not own. Even if you own a lock, please be careful picking it, because if your neighbors see you picking a random lock and they don't know you, they will call the police. Right? So I personally have my own little locks that I use to practice picking. The White Hat Lab has locks that you can use. Please use those and not locks on doors. Cool. So I'm going to teach you about how a lock works, because in order to pick a lock, you kind of have to know how it works. So the first image I have, for those of you on that sort of side looking at that screen, it's the one far, far away. It's like this one. So this is how a lock looks. This is like a cross-section of a lock. This is what happens when you put a key in and are able to turn the lock. And then I'll move over here for you guys. There's a shear line, which is how the pins will be able to set, and you can be able to turn them. There's the key pin, which is a little red bit. They're all labeled pretty well on the slides. There's the driver pin, so the key pin and the driver pin will line up with the shear line, and then you can turn the lock. There's also springs, which is how you're able to get the pins up and down. So then at the bottom, there's a little GIF of how the key will be inserted into the lock. And this is what we're trying to emulate when we pick a lock, is that key going in the lock, and you're able to pick it, right? So if anyone has any questions, feel free to stop me. But this is just kind of how a lock works, and you need to know that in order to pick it. So one thing about locks is that they are made in real life, right? So if locks weren't made in real life, all of the pins would line up exactly. They would all be in a straight line, and they would all be exactly like parallel with each other, right? But they're made in real life, and in real life, there's error. So in reality, the pins, like the holes that the pins go into, are not aligned. They are not centered. And that is how we are able to pick a lock, because without that error, it would be super, super hard to realistically pick a lock manually. So, here we go. So this is a GIF of how we pick a lock. Basically, one pin at a time will be aligned, or will be pushed on by the tension that you're giving with a tension wrench, and it will be pushed against the barrel of the lock. So that's when you see that little like ATP symbol with bind in it, that's the one that's being pushed against by the tension that you're giving. And when you push it up, it'll set. You may or may not feel the lock twitch a little bit, or you may or may not hear a little click when the lock pin sets. And this is how we pick a lock. We pick it one at a time. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. This is my personal favorite way because you get a lot of finesse in it, and it's a good way to be able to pick a lot of different kinds of locks. So I have a couple of live demos that I can do. I brought two locks. One is a white hat lock, and I know it's kind of hard to see, but you'll know when I open it because it'll like pop. The white hat locks are nice because we have some clear ones and some see-through ones where you're able to basically see through them and see the pins that you're picking one at a time. There's a lot of different ways you can pick a lock wrong, but if you can do it right, you're able to open it. So I'm going to see if I can do this on the fly. It's a lot different when there's people watching you. I can generally do this pretty fast, but that's fine. So in the meantime, I'll give you a little bit of background on different tension wrenches. So a tension wrench is what you use to turn the lock. Basically, it's how you're applying the rotational force like a key, because when you turn a lock, you have to use a key. So there's two different types that are generally used. There's a bottom of the keyway and a top of the keyway tension wrench. I generally use the top of the keyway, which is used mostly for smaller locks, but you can really use it for anything. A bottom of the keyway lock, you can tell the difference because the bottom will be a little bit longer, and you'll be able to stick it into the bottom of the lock and turn it like a key. Let's see. One thing about lockpicking is you have to apply the right amount of force. So you have to be able to apply not too much or not too little, because if you apply too much, then you will not be able to set the pins, or you may over push them up into the pin well, I think is what it's called. And if you apply too little, then there will not be enough rotational force, and it'll be basically like sticking a key in a lock and not turning it, which, as we all know, that's not how you open a door. So I'm going to try this other lock, which is my lock that I have brought from home. It's a relatively simple one, so I should be able to pick it pretty fast. This is only one way to pick a lock. There's a bunch of other ones. You can see on the slide the picks that are a little bit wavy. Those ones are called rakes, and that's a little bit of an easier way to pick a lock. See, I picked this one. Yay. But yeah, so that's how you really pick a lock. There's rakes, which you can use, and there's single pin picks, which you can use in order to pick a lock. There's a lot of other ways that you can try to make your locks more secure. So that was how to pick a better lock part 1. This is how to pick a better lock part 2, which is how to choose locks for yourself. So pick locks with different types of anti-picking pins. For example, spool pins. Spool pins are a different type of pin. They're all the ones on like the top line of that image, and they basically will make you think that you picked the lock when really you didn't. So you will pick it and you'll be like, oh, this lock turned 10%, but now I can't turn it anymore. Why didn't I pick it? And it'll be because there's a spool pin or some other anti-picking pin. There's a bunch of really weird ones like serrated pins, or like, I think there's mushroom pins, or like a bunch of other weird random ones. But what you have to do is let back enough tension that you can set that pin for real, and then you'll be able to pick that lock, which is a little bit difficult and it's hard to figure out, and it takes a lot of practice and a lot of time. Also, pick a lock with more pins. So the more pins you have, the harder it is to pick a lock. So if you have a lock with like 8 pins, that's going to be way harder than a lock with 2 pins. Never buy a 2-pin lock. That's a terrible idea. There's a bunch of other ways that you can pick better locks, but one thing I need you to remember about locks is they're only as good as the things that they're attached to. So like, you could have the world's best like lock on your locker, or like a chain or a bike lock or whatever, but if you have like bolt cutters, you can just cut the chain or whatever it's on. So make sure that that's all set. And also, like, if you can just break the door jamb down by pushing the door hard enough, what good was the lock anyway? So that's about all I have for lock picking. These are most of the resources I have. If you have questions, you can come talk to me. You should definitely come to the White Hat Lab if you want to try out lock picking. We have lockpick sets and locks in the lab, so anytime an officer is there, you can definitely come check it out. You can come ask any of us for help, because I know a lot of us do a lot of lock picking in our spare time. I personally do it in class to stay awake. So if anyone, I don't know if we have time for questions. Yeah, no questions. So yeah, that's all I have. Thank you for listening.
Although I'm going to take my 10-minute talk and condense it down because we're running over time and everyone's tired and you're like, it's freshman year and I'm already like addicted to coffee because I can't stay awake. That's pretty standard. So, hi, I'm going to talk about CTFs because a bunch of you probably saw us mentioning that at our booths. It's how we promised you're actually going to hack some stuff. So here we go. Who am I? I am a computer science 4th year already. I emphasize with Nick there. This is a badly photoshopped photo of me. I'll let you guess which parts of it are real. I am the assistant CTF master. So Nick is actually the CTF master, but he had to talk about other stuff, so I'm going to talk about CTFs. I am the wearer of many metaphorical hats. If you go to the tutoring center, if you go to the Ignite events, which you should, there's free pizza. Free pizza, come on. You'll see me around. I also bounce around the department. I might be grading your papers. You'll see me. I'm kind of like a ghost. It rhymes with a friendly ghost. I'm less friendly. So you're like saying, all right, CTF, WTF. Well, what does that even mean? You're throwing 3 letters at me. I don't know what that means. Well, if you've ever played video games or you browse the internet or whatever, CTF stands for Capture the Flag. And I had to include this photo from WikiHow because I don't know what Capture the Flag game they're playing, but it looks kind of painful. Like, I'm bad at sports, but I don't think I'm that bad at sports. All right, so it's called Capture the Flag. So for those of you who haven't played Capture the Flag at all in real life, and you're like, I really don't know what you're talking about right now, Capture the Flag's a great, simple game. You have 2 teams. There's a flag for each team. Your goal is to get the flag from the other team and bring it back to your base before they can do the same thing to you. So you're playing attack and defense. If you played first-person shooters or Rocket League, maybe? I don't know. A bunch of those games have it, but if you play it like in high school, you probably played a big empty field where you just run at each other for 3 hours, get really tired. I know that's all my school did. It was boring. But yeah, you've played it. So in the computer science world, there's no running, because we're computer scientists. We don't run. And we have text-based flags. So instead of like capturing a physical object, what you're trying to do is you're usually trying to find a little message. And it looks like it's like flag, curly brace, some cute message in leet speak, and then another closed curly brace. And you turn that in for points, right? You're like, aha, I found the flag. I captured it, right? So it's like just like we mentioned with information security, it's keeping stuff safe by not letting anyone see it. And in the bottom here, we have kind of a diagram of what that might look like in the computer world. Like, they'll have a bunch of hackers set up on teams where they set up servers and they try to attack each other's servers. And the idea is you have flags that you're keeping secret from them. They have flags that keep secret from you, and whoever scores the most flags wins. Mimics real-life CTF really nicely. So there's actually two kinds, though. So that one I was just describing as attack and defend. And they're really cool, right? You're like hacking each other over a network. It's like all in. Really feels like a real CTF. It's live time, like mashing on a keyboard with 2 other people trying to fight off the hackers, Hollywood style. You've got cool progress bars if you're getting fancy. I don't know. They're actually really hard, and they're usually like invitation only. They're really involved events. You really need a lot of computer scientific background. Like I said, they're invitation-only events. They're harder to set up, so we don't do as many of those. In fact, we don't really do any right now. We're trying to get back into it. UCSB has one they invite us to every year, but that's about it. The really big ones usually end in attack and defense CTFs. Like I think DEF CON ends in an attack and defense CTF. If you don't know, DEF CON is because there's conferences for everything. It's a hacker conference in Vegas, so it has all the fun of Vegas with all the fun of being around a whole bunch of hackers. So it's both sketchy and I've heard quite fun. So then there's the Jeopardy style. And if people haven't played Jeopardy before, if you haven't gotten bored of daytime television because you have the internet now, who does that anymore? It's like Jeopardy. There's categories, there's point values, there's harder things and easier things, and it's a lot more fun. You're not really playing against each other in an attack-defense style, but you're just going to rack up the scoreboard in the time you get given. We do a lot of those. So the typical categories you see there are like web security. So for instance, they'll have a whole bunch of challenges, easy to hard, occasionally mislabeled, and usually just all hard. But they're like, all right, here, we set up a fake website. Go hack it. And like the basic ones will be like a website, you're like admin, login. Oh, wow, there's the flag. I am elite hacker. And the next one will be like, all right, please craft this cryptographic cookie to log in. And you'll be like, oh, that's a lot harder. So they're a lot of fun. So web security has a whole bunch of different topics. You'll see talks on how web security works in the real world and how they get applied to CTFs kind of throughout the quarter and some workshops. We see network analysis. They'll hand you like a whole bunch of packets they recorded on a network and be like, hey, what's going on here? Usually they'll give you some kind of hint. And maybe it's like, oh, they're transferring a file. You kind of reassemble the file, take a look at it. It's like a JPEG that spells out the flag. Or maybe it's like logins to another server. The game hosts are clearly running, so you can log into that server with credentials you intercept. That's pretty fun. There's reverse engineering. You see a lot of these ones because they're easy to make. They're like, all right, we wrote a program. We compiled it, so now it's really hard to look at and figure out what it does. Go. And you sit there and you cry because it's all in assembler, and assembler is hard to read. But they're actually a lot of fun. So I did a lot of that this summer as an internship. But reverse engineering is basically getting handed a program and taking it apart, right? Either can I break it, or can I make it progress past like an unhelpful message? Like some of these programs will be like, it's a calculator that does nothing, and your goal is to actually make it do something. You'll have mobile challenges, which can be any of the previous ones. You see them a little bit more rarely. I like them because I've done mobile development, where they'll be like, all right, here's an iPhone app, here's an Android app. Here's some combination of the things. And it requires a bit more specialized knowledge, because you might be able to take your web security and your reverse engineering skills and throw them together into like, hey, how does it work on a phone? I don't know the phone system. I don't know the weird vulnerabilities there. And then we have like trivia questions. Those ones are great. They'll be like, who's this hacker? Who got hacked last week? Or who founded this? Like the challenges usually run on a website. Like, when did this website get started? They're usually lower value, but someone's got to rack them in those points, and it's always fun to submit those, get nice green scores. Then there's miscellaneous. They'll throw all kinds of random stuff at you. Sometimes stuff that has nothing to do with security. But they're actually a lot of fun. You never know you'll see the miscellaneous categories. And then there's other real categories that I don't have up here, but you'll see them if you ever come out to a CTF. So who competes? Literally everyone. Like, it's pretty great. We log on, we make a team. We're usually the hash-slinging hackers, for those of you who like SpongeBob. And it's great because hashes are actually a computer security thing as well, you'll learn if you take any security courses. So it really is a double play on words. We're the most creative people in the room, we know. Thank you. We accept rewards or cash. So who competes? Literally everyone. Like, we go to these CTFs, and people make teams from all around the world. Like, we'll play against people from like Ukraine, Santa Barbara, the East Coast, occasionally China or Africa. You'll see people from all over the place. It's really great. Like, you really get on there, it's like 1,000 teams. You have like 48, 72 hours to rack up the scoreboard. And it's kind of fun because you're like, wow, we're beating the Santa Barbara team for once, or whatever. You never know. They're pretty good. There's quite a few really good teams. It is fun sometimes. They have like their B team out. You get to actually beat them on the scoreboard. And you're like, yeah, we're good. It's like beating the Patriots or the Warriors on their off day. You're like, yeah, we're so great. They're like, half our guys are like on vacation. Shh, we won. So it's international competition. So good news and bad news. Are they difficult? Usually. The DEF CON qualifiers, who had that in their talk? That was Max. Those are brutally hard. They're like the qualifying round, and we'll all sit down, and I think last year we got 10 points. And those 10 points were because we got the Hello World Challenge for logging in. Surprisingly, that puts above about 1,000 teams that didn't even finish that. Like, they created a team and like just didn't do anything. But yeah, some of them are just brutally hard. Like, that was built on a computer. Maybe all the challenges revolved around a computer system built by the NSA that nobody knew. So we're all like, cool. Are they still fun? Absolutely. We get food out here a fair amount, like donuts or pizza. One time at Chipotle, because one of our team members is addicted to Chipotle and won a catering party that he decided to splurge on us. I can't guarantee that'll happen again. I don't know how much Chipotle he ate this summer, so we'll find out. But there's still a lot of fun. Like, you get to talk with the people, you get to hang out for a few hours. A lot of the challenges, I mean, even though they're hard, a lot of the challenges you can still pick off. And you learn a ton from them. Like, I learned how to reverse engineer mobile apps from one of them, and then I did that as a job this summer, right? So it can really directly translate to be like, even if you do the small challenges, like, that's more than a lot of people in the major or, in the field. So you'd be able to go to somebody and say, yeah, I'm not great at it, but I know the basics of this. And that can actually be a lot of fun. Because from there you could kind of build your way up to harder and harder challenges. The main thing, the reason they're hard is that these CTFs are all put on by like random community people. So some of them are just really badly balanced, right? They make challenges, they don't realize how hard they are. It's not usually because you're not smart, right? We'll come out there and be like, this is brutally hard, but you'll still learn a ton, right? You'll be like, even just like pursuing a problem, you usually like, oh, I didn't know about this tool, I didn't know about this approach, I didn't know about this thing. And you put them all together and you get nothing, but hey, now you know all those things, and you never know where you might need them later. Like, you really never know. So how do I compete? You can compete with us. We meet up on the weekends usually, so we're trying to be more active. CTFs come and go. We don't have any control of their schedule, but most weekends we'll have an event where we'll go up to the lab and hang out for a few hours. The bigger ones we'll make more of a fanfare about, of a Facebook event, and we'll like really try to get the whole club out for either the ones that we think are fun to compete in, where we can really get a lot of points, or good intro challenges, or the important ones like DEF CON quals. But for the rest of them, most we'll be like, hey, there's some random one running this weekend. We've done it before. It's it's all right. And you want to come out and hang out with us? We'll be in the lab for a few hours. Drop by. The great thing is they run for like 72 hours. So we usually will set up a team. If there isn't a team yet, ping us. We'll set up a team, add you to it, and then you can just compete at home. And we'll usually meet up in the lab and like have that in-person communication style. You can compete remotely. That's what I was saying. You can do it at home. Oftentimes we'll compete for a few hours upstairs, and we're like, all right, I want to go get dinner. I want to go home. I have a comfy chair that I want to sit in and like put on my headphones and really just blast dubstep until I hack away. Or if you're like me, jazz. And then on your own. I was going to put a sad face there. Please compete with us. We like it. But if you want to compete on your own challenges, if you find some of your own, you can. CTF Time is the main website for this. Just Google that, and you'll find it. It looks like that. If you find something else, I don't know what you found, but it's not CTF Time. I warn you, because as soon as you start learning computer security, you're like, wow, everything is awful. And everything is broken. So yeah, CTF Time, they're great. They have just a giant list of all the events. Some of them may be sketchy. Some of them may be bad. Some of them may be brutally hard because they've never done it before, and everyone's like, this is brutally hard. What the heck, man? But you should go there. There's tons of stuff to learn about.
But yeah, so yes, we have one coming up.
Cool. That's my whole talk. I'm sorry I had to yell at you for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I know that everyone's like, oh God, he's so annoying. Go away. But there. I hope you enjoyed White Hat. I think that's the end of our talks tonight. Is it? All right. Max is going to do the closing because I'm not allowed to shout at people anymore.
Cool. All right. Thanks so much for coming. Let's give Jasper a round of applause.